Welcome to the Passion, Purpose, Power podcast. I'm your host, Ames. I'm a neurodivergent, fat, queer counsellor, coach and clinical supervisor, and I love stories. I love hearing your stories, I love sharing stories, and I love talking with people about their stories. In this podcast, I'm going to introduce you to interesting people with interesting stories to share about their passions, purpose, and power. If you love this podcast, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any amazing episodes, and come and find me on social media. I want to hear from you, and please share your stories with me. I'm very, very lucky that I get to have a chat with one of my friends on this episode of the podcast. She is someone that I have known for years, went to school with, but have not really kind of reconnected until more recent years. And that's really exciting. So I'm going to introduce Ruth to you. So Ruth is a writer, theatre maker and educator. She has what she calls a portfolio career, but the thread which runs through everything she does is a desire to enable others to work towards a more equal world and to tell stories. Why stories? Because stories can and do change perspectives, minds, and the world. Because joy and entertainment are soul-fillingly important, and because stories unite and give voice and reveal. I love that. I love that. That's so exciting. Welcome, Ruth, to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello.
So I kind of want to ask everything all at once. But let's start with passion. Let's start with passion. So that introduction is kind of full of things that you're kind of passionate about, and that's what you kind of made your career around. But what to you, if I was to ask you, kind of what excites you, what gets you fired up, what are you kind of like, what do you most look forward to, gets you out of bed in the morning and that kind of thing?
I think probably that I could say the thing I'm most passionate about is enabling others in some way. I taught for 10 years in the state education system. I still am an educator. I still teach. I don't just work with young people. But I think that's the biggest thing for me is helping other people to achieve things, and whether it's an older person who I've worked with recently who was told at school that they couldn't write, and yet at the end of 3 sessions with me had written some little poems and said they sort of finally overcome that idea that they were just not very good at writing, they couldn't do it, and that person was in their 80s, and that's just a fabulous thing to know that I've had a part of, just helping somebody to do something they thought they couldn't, whether it's a small child tying their shoelaces, or like I said, an older person who thought they couldn't write and has written poetry. That's what I really love doing.
Yeah, you can hear. How did you discover that? Like, I guess I'm interested in how people find what they're passionate about, and whether it just kind of emerges out of life, career, being bored. I don't know. What can you pinpoint when you sort of knew that that's what you were most passionate about?
Well, I've known you since we were teenagers, but even before that, I would line my teddy bears up on my stairs, and I would take the little cards that I'd made, and I would teach them how to read or how to do maths, even before I could read or do maths. So I've sort of always wanted to teach. I then spent a significant period of my life definitely not wanting to be a teacher. When I went to university, I did English and theatre studies. And I remember sitting in the careers office at my university and saying, what can I do that isn't a teacher with an English degree? And then I was listed the other options, and I sort of went, oh, maybe I fancy. No, I'm definitely not going to be a teacher. And then out of university, I spent a year doing office temping jobs, and then went, okay, finally, I'll go and I'll do my PGCE. And like I said, I taught for 10 years, and I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. That might be a lie. I don't think any teacher enjoys every minute of it, but overall I enjoyed it. And then I came out to have children, decided I couldn't balance the two things, but also felt quite frustrated within the education system that just doesn't work quite how I'd like it to. And I'm sure there are many teachers who can tell you how much better the education system could work. It's probably best I don't get on that soapbox right now. But I've continued that passion of facilitating. I like to say facilitating now rather than teaching, because I really do believe that one of the issues within the teaching world is the power dynamic that goes on, and the idea that the teacher is all knowledgeable and all powerful and can't admit to mistakes is outdated and not helpful, in my opinion. So I try not to call myself a teacher. Like in the little intro, I've used the word educator, facilitator, something like that. I don't see myself as the sort of didactic teacher, but as somebody who facilitates, somebody who helps. Coaches, whatever, which words you do, coaching, don't you? But those words I think are much more kind of in line with what I like to see, because I learn from everybody who I help, including that small child that I've helped tie their shoelaces. I learn from them too. We all learn from each other. So that's my kind of passions.
I kind of want to press you more on that, more on the why is the education system so terrible. But I think you kind of explained for you just a clash of values, I suppose, and sort of needing it to feel more equal.
Absolutely, a clash, and that's not a comment on individual teachers within any education system.
Of course.
But the systems, I feel, are quite constricting. I don't think that the outcomes are necessarily in line with what is best for students. I don't think that we are always within education systems helping individuals. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely appreciate that, especially the state education system is underfunded. There are too many. You can't teach 30 individuals in a classroom. You just can't. But that doesn't mean that I can sit in that situation and feel that it's okay. So I find different ways to do that now.
You have. That's exciting. And so you studied English and theatre, and you kind of combine that now. So tell me a little bit about the theatre performance side of Ruth.
Well, so as I said, I taught for 10 years, then I had children, spent a little bit of time doing that, and then I decided I wanted to write, and it's something that I don't always acknowledge in myself, but other people always notice about me. Basically, if I say I'm going to do something, I usually do. And so I decided I wanted to write something. And so I started off writing educational resources for a small education company, and thought, I've got 5 or 6 education guides to different specifications of English and drama qualifications at various levels. There we are, I've done something. And then I thought, well, actually, is that what I wanted to write, or is that just the easiest way to have got into writing, to essentially write down what I know about teaching? And I went to a writers meeting in our little hometown of Calne, run by a charity that I might tell you more about later, called WordFest, that I'd not heard of at that point, and sat with these actual authors, some of whom lived in Calne, and thought, wow, that's quite exciting. And everyone was sort of going, oh yes, well, I've written this book and I've written this book. And I said, well, I've written a couple of photocopyable educational resources. Does that count? And so then I decided I wanted to write more. And so I went on a playwriting course with the Theatre Royal in Bath, which was great fun. My compatriots on that course they still take the mickey out of me, because we had to write a play. Fine, fabulous. Everybody came in with all their serious plays. I wrote a play for preschoolers which contains the words red, orange, yellow, said in different ways. So it's a good play, don't get me wrong, but it is,
that sounds amazing.
not quite what everybody else was writing. But then that's also a little bit me. I don't like to do what everybody else does. I tend to bend rules a little bit. And then alongside that, I also got applied for and won a very small award for the Reading Fringe Festival, to take a piece of children's theatre, a scratch piece. So that's a piece that's in development. And they gave me a small bursary to take a piece of scratch theatre to the Reading Fringe. And so I thought, right, again, this is how I motivate myself. I say yes to things and then go, how am I going to achieve that then? And so that was my very first piece that has developed into what I now call the Invisible Museum, which is my one-woman time traveler show for 7-year-olds and their families. And it's all about, well, it's got various iterations now. So I've got the original one was about women in STEM through history, and that's the seed that went to Reading Fringe and got my very best review, which was, it's better than swimming. I don't know how much that person liked swimming or not, but whatever, it was better than swimming. So that's still my favorite review that I've ever had of a piece of work. And then, yes, I've then used that story again. What the other bit that you said in my introduction about loving stories because they change the world. My character in the Invisible Museum is a time-traveling curator of a museum from the year 2250, and I go back in time and I visit and I talk to all these people who are invisible, so who have not had their stories told in the history of 2250 quite so well, and I collect artifacts from them, I collect their stories, and then I happen to have my time machine breaks, and therefore I'm stuck in whatever year it is now, 2023. And I tell the stories and we fix the time pack together. And it's got versions with, like I've said, women in STEM. It's got versions with women in sustainability. It's got a version of Victorian women. I tend to focus on women because that is one of the, well, because it's the invisible people, quite often women have been through history. There are also people of colour, people with disabilities, people with sexualities that weren't accepted at the time. So it's trying to tell those stories that people might not have heard, so that they go away knowing something else. Have I rattled on enough, Amy? What were you talking about? Where did that start?
The whole time I was going, I know really cool people. What an amazing show. What a fantastic idea. And I suppose it speaks to that part of you that is the enabler, the you know, you are lifting up voices of people that do not have voices anymore, whose stories need to be told, and yes to stories, which might be a good point to bring in the book that you've co-authored. So we're just going to touch on that a little bit, because in a further podcast we're going to get Loretta, your co-author, to come on and hopefully talk about that book together, which will be so amazing. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the book.
So the book is called Talking to Children About Race, and as you and I discussed before the podcast, there's something to be said for two white women talking about race, but they are also conversations that we need to have with our children. And the way that this came about is in 2020, when we had the murder of George Floyd, and we had the BLM really came to the forefront, all the Black Lives Matter things, and owned in Bristol with Colston and the statue, and all of those sorts of things were going on. I have a very good friend of mine who is the co-author, Loretta Andrews, who I met because we both have children who were born within a week of each other, in that strange way that you do when you become a parent. You meet people perhaps you wouldn't have crossed paths with previously. I don't know, maybe I would. But Loretta and I got on particularly well because we've always seen the world quite similarly, but we have very different backgrounds. So Loretta is mixed race, and she still lives in London, whereas I now live in rural Wiltshire. And throughout this time, I approached her and said, I'd really like to talk to you about what's going on and how we talk to our children. I am also acutely aware that I'm approaching one of my actually very few friends of colour to ask them to teach me what to do, and that's not okay either. And I am well aware that at the moment you've probably got 101 people asking 101 things of you. So please, if this is not a question you want to talk to me about, tell me that. But I would also value your opinion if you have the time and the space to have that conversation. So we had a few conversations, and Loretta shared what I had said to her, and the way that I'd approached it by not expecting her to talk to me if she didn't want to. And a friend of hers who was a publisher said, "You two thought of writing a book?" And that's where that one came from. And so and we had very long discussions at the beginning. I said, I don't think it's my book to write. And Loretta said that we should write it together, and it should be the book that I wished I could read and Loretta wished she could have given me, so that we've got a resource there that helps people have conversations. And it is aimed at, I suppose, if you're going to talk target market, it is aimed at white parents, because actually parents of colour live this as well. So it's aimed at, and it's about my journey and the things I've done wrong along the way and the cock-ups I've made, and it's Loretta and I talking. We actually said all the way through, because we had calls like you and I are having now, we said we should have recorded those as a podcast, but we never did.
Oh, you should do a podcast. That would be amazing.
Wow. But so that's that one. But it's as we said, I've talked for ages about it, which I wasn't intending to, but perhaps it's probably a bigger conversation with Loretta as well.
Yeah, that we'll definitely get you both on and talk more about the concept of that. But I think you've explained it really well, and explained why it's two white people talking about this particular point of your life, that this thing that you created, but yeah, we'll stay tuned for a further episode on that book about talking to children about race. So if we were to sort of move on to talk about purpose, do you think there's a difference between passion and purpose? Do you feel like, what do you sort of interpret by the kind of word purpose? What gives your life purpose?
Oh, that's really big. That feels like a philosophical question.
We love a philosophical question.
What is my purpose? You see, the word purpose always strikes me as a little bit, I feel like that's a bit grandiose. Like, well, do I have a purpose? Really? I'm just another human. We all have a purpose, just to sort of get on. So I don't know if I feel I have a purpose, and if it's different to my passion. But I maybe that's where the equality idea comes in. I am purposeful in trying to approach things that improve things for us all, because I see equality as being an improvement for everybody. So perhaps if I see that as a bit more of a purpose than a passion.
I suppose purpose, it comes from passion and is also changeable. I think that we can be passionate about lots of things at once.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word purpose feels quite committed, doesn't it? What is your purpose?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that's what's terrifying me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is probably going to be even more challenging, or maybe not. If we move on to the word powerful, because we've talked about equality and we've talked about race and education and power imbalances there. If I was to ask you, when do you feel you're most powerful? Do you have a sense of what makes you feel powerful?
This is just a podcast, isn't it? So no one can see the face I just pulled of pure terror when you said that. When do you feel the most powerful? Maybe not right now, because there's a wasp on the window. Would you mind if I just remove that before I get terrified?
Yes, if it's obviously it's inside.
And I would like to get rid of it and make it outside. Give me one moment. Sorry.
Please get rid of the wasp. No, it's fine. I'm going to grab a drink.
Oh, I've got headphones on. You can still hear me, can't you?
I can, but that adds more fun to my experience of you getting the wasp out.
It's gone. It's gone. Ah, there we are.
Yay!
Okay, I win. I am now powerful because I can remove a wasp from my own home. Okay,
Back to
we
the
have a
terrifying.
pause so that you might need to edit things. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that in. Lexi, leave the wasp in. It was brilliant. But also, this is going out on video as well, so people will be able to see your face. But yes,
brilliant.
back to, well, I think I do like, it's not that I like putting people on the spot, but sometimes stuff emerges from putting people on the spot, asking in deep questions. I think as women, particularly, it's not a question that we're asked very often when we feel powerful. And we can talk about feeling empowered, but we're not always able to say I feel powerful when I do X, Y, Z, or when I am this, that, and the other. So yeah,
Well,
what do you think?
yeah, when do I feel powerful? I don't know. I'm going to give you a bit of a politician's answer and go slightly sideways.
Go for it.
Because talking about race and talking about gender and talking about equality and education as we have been, I consider myself to be an intersectional feminist. So I feel like one of the things I need to do is acknowledge the powers that I do have that are greater than other people's. So I have the fact that I am white. I have the fact that I am middle class. Is that the right word? But I've been to university. I've got a relatively mostly affluent in comparison to a significant number of people's lifestyle. I've got places where I have a position at the table that other people wouldn't have. And yes, there are places where other people have more power than me, but I also acknowledge that there are places where I have more power. So I suppose for me, the power is, again, in what I can do to help those who have less power than me, or to give my power to other people. As well as trying to ensure that equality happens from those above down as well. So I have had conversations with men who are old enough to be my father, who have attempted. Why attempted, is that the right reason? I think possibly even just through their experience of life, have considered it okay to patronize me because I am a younger woman, and I feel quite proud of myself and perhaps quite powerful when I stand up to those things. I'm always polite, but I quite like being able to say, no, that's not okay. So, for example, I've been chair of trustees at the charity I mentioned a little while ago, WordFest, for a while. I'm not again now, but I was chair of trustees for a while, and I insisted on calling it chair because it could be man or a woman who was there. And I had somebody who insisted on calling me Madam Chairman. Mostly in a sort of sarcastic, fun tone, having a bit of a laugh. But I feel like things like that, even calling it out nicely, equally in a sort of, I know you're only joking, but let's not do that, please, because that's not a joke that we need to do anymore because it's not funny. And let's just move on. So I enjoy those kinds of moments, feel powerful when I can have those kinds of conversations, because I don't think as a younger woman in particular, I felt able to call those things out. I would probably just have smiled and carried on and gone, well, I can do it quietly in the background. I don't need to argue with those people who do hold more power than me. I can just kind of find my way around. And I would say to people that the 40s and my 40s are my best decade so far, because I've really got to a point where I don't give the blank with whatever word you feel is most appropriate here. But I would, if I feel like something's wrong, then I will now say it. Because I've got to that point in my life.
Yeah.
That's probably it. That's a
so
feeling
interesting.
of power.
I mean, I'd love to see where it goes when people get asked this question, because it's a leader of all sorts of paths that word can open up. But what you were sort of describing was in an interaction where someone is coming at you from what they are perhaps what feels like a more powerful position, taking some power back in being able to equalize that power dynamic feels powerful. It feels like empowering. I don't know, whether there's a difference between those two words, really, but it feels empowering to be able to put yourself back up to a level that they perhaps didn't want you at, whether it was
Yeah, and
intentional or not.
I think it is, yeah, and I think it is about that equaling relationships, leveling relationships. If I'm working with young people, I don't come in being the powerful person in the room, because I don't believe that that's a good way to build a relationship with anybody. And so now that I am the person I have become, I also don't expect anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean I don't give respect to people who have more knowledge than me or who have more experience than me of certain things. Absolutely, there can be respect there, but there's no, in my mind, there shouldn't be a automatic deference. I suppose that's probably the thing that I'm not a massive fan of, for anybody. I think it should always be about putting yourself into a position where you see another person as another person, whether they're 90 or 4, whether they're a professor or a toddler. It doesn't matter. They're just another person, and people deserve to be respected.
Do you feel powerful when you are performing, when you are telling these stories and imparting, that education of these invisible stories?
Oh, do I feel powerful? I feel like I've been entrusted with something I want to do. It's me that's entrusted myself. I wrote the piece, but I feel like there's a respect there for the stories that I'm telling, and I want to tell them well, and I want to respect the people who I am giving voice to. Do I feel powerful? That's a really interesting, because obviously I'm standing in a room as the center of attention, asking lots of people to look at me. So there must be a little bit of an enjoyment of attention, mustn't there? But powerful is a really tricky word, isn't it?
It is. It
There is a
has
power
lots of
invested in
meanings.
me. There is a power, isn't there? If I'm in a room and there are people watching me, coming to listen to me, then I do have a power in that space. Of course I do. And so I suppose I have to use my power wisely, and ensure that I do things respectfully and well. But I mean, I would also say that my family might tell you a different story about what I'm like to live with in the run up to a performance, which might be a little less pleasant for them, perhaps. there's is that power? No, that's anxiety. But
is it quite a nervy sort of nerve related thing?
it's funny. I never think that I'm nervous, and it doesn't come across as being nervous. But I am. Oh, now here's a little bit of an insight into me. I'm probably a bit short-tempered, and I'm probably a bit highly strung, and so I'm not quite so pleasant to be around for. Well, it's not too long before the performances usually, but it depends how long it's been between performances, and how much line learning I'm needing to do, and how much remembering of what I'm sorting out and organizing. Because being a one-person show, you're just reliant on yourself, which means you've got to remember everything, which has its pros and cons. Because obviously, I'm just reliant on myself. That's nice. But on the other side, I've got nobody else that's helping me out or balancing it or supporting it, I suppose. So my family have to do the supporting, which entails dealing with me with a short temper.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about there's two more things that I wanted to ask about, well, maybe three, but they're probably all tied in together. So tell us a little bit about WordFest, because that was something that we were going to come back to.
Yeah, so WordFest is a fantastic local charity, which I got involved with, yes, way back when, possibly about 2017, 2018, something like that. And it is a charity which supports literacy development at all levels in our town and the surrounding villages, the community area. So we have run learn to read courses for adults whose reading levels were meant that they weren't even able to access college courses at the time, although there's now some learning courses out there from Wiltshire which they can access. We've run theatre for schools, we've run pop-up performances in town, we've got a tale trail that goes around town, which is a digital app that takes you around the town to specific locations, and there are stories written by local writers and histories, and there's an art trail now as well. Then what else have we done? We've done a stand-up comedy project for young people at risk of antisocial behaviour, or young people who are struggling perhaps a little bit. And we had a stand-up comic come in and help them to do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy. I've worked with her before. It is very revealing to do a project like that. She's brilliant. And Angie Belcher, the comic that I'm talking about, she actually has a whole set of work that she does with the NHS Comedy on Prescription. But so she worked with the young people. We've done all sorts of projects, and the point of WordFest is to support people at all levels. So we also have a writers group, for example. We're going to have an anthology coming out actually later this month. There's an anthology of writing by Calne writers. Those Calne writers I met way back when and went, wow, there's other people that live in Calne and they do writing. It's exciting. And we had, I think we've got over 30 pieces by around 20 different writers at all different stages of their journey. So for some people, it's the first piece of writing they've ever had published. For other people, they've got books and they've also written for this. So it's people at all levels, and that's one of the reasons that I'm involved in it, is because it does what I really enjoy, and it supports people, whatever their stage, to move on with their journey through literacy being our focus. But that also has often meant digital literacy and health literacy. That's the other one. We are supporting Evie's Book Swap, which is a book swap in Calne in memory of a young person in Calne, and we're hopefully going to have a whole trail of book swaps around as well.
Amazing. But it sounds like such a well, it's with your values of enabling and words being important and enabling people to tell stories. I think that's that definitely the writers group sounds like it kind of is right up your street.
Yep, absolutely.
And you posted something today which I didn't even realize that you were doing. So is the sort of work with older people was a piece of work, was that with your production company Knapsack Productions?
No, that is just as a freelancer. So as I said, portfolio career, there's strings here and there. My eldest, who's 14, said to me not that long ago, you collect jobs like other people collect stamps, which it's not far from the truth.
We love that.
But yes, so this is as a freelance writer, but Celebrating Age Wiltshire is the organisation that I work through, who are affiliated with the Wiltshire Music Centre, which is a national portfolio organisation of the Arts Council. And Celebrating Age Wiltshire is about supporting older people in the community, with a particular focus on those who might become isolated. So I've been involved in 2 projects with them. One was called creative conversations, where you go and work one-to-one for a period of time with an older person who has been referred to Celebrating Age Wiltshire because they might need they need something to support them, potentially somebody who's moved to the area or who's lost family, or they can be for lots of different reasons, but an older person who would value creativity as a support mechanism to help them. So you have a period of time where we go into their house and start a creative conversation, and there's various different artists that Celebrating Age work with. So some people are visual artists, some people are singers, some people are poets, and the idea is that you facilitate a conversation and follow their interests, and come up with things that will enable them to be creative around your own personal creative skills, but you're paired with people who might have an interest in the creative skill that you have. And so that's a lovely project that I do sometimes with them. And then the one that I posted about today has been on my Walking Words project. So Walking Words is something that I started last year. So last year I was training to do to walk a marathon in aid of Julia's House Hospice, which is a local hospice for young people. And I decided I was never going to run a marathon. There are some things you've just got to say it's not going to happen, and that is one of them, but that I could probably walk one. So myself and a group of friends decided we would sign up to the Great Wiltshire Walk. It's obviously takes a bit of training to walk for that far in one day. And whilst I do walk a bit, I thought, how am I going to get myself to go out for really long walks? And although I was doing it with a group of friends, I think all of us are self-employed or freelance and mums. So you can imagine how many times our diaries actually match. So essentially we were all training separately, although we knew we were heading to go and do the walk together. And so I was thinking I'm going to do like 15, 18-mile walks on my own. And whilst there is a lot of bliss in that amount of time on my own, for me, I love my own company and peace. I also thought I'm going to have to keep myself kind of engaged in things, because it's quite a long time to keep walking and my feet might hurt and I might need to take my mind off it. So I thought, well, I could take photographs, but I'm not really very good at photographs and they never really do what I want them to. What am I going to do? And so I thought, actually, I like writing, I like walking, so I'm going to try and do little word sketches of what I see as I walk along. So that's where it started. And I really enjoyed doing it. And I wrote some poems and I wrote some things that were just little like vignettes, sort of sentences, mixture of things. And then we did achieve the walk. Yay! But then I wanted to carry on with it. And so my New Year's resolution, one of the first I've ever managed to keep this long, was that I was going to walk every day and write something every day. And by walk, it's not always a long walk. It's very rarely an 18-mile walk anymore. Sometimes it's round the block almost from where I live. And sometimes I write lots and sometimes I write a sentence. But thus far, on the 17th of August, I have written every day, which I'm very proud of myself for managing that. But that's the project that I've been doing personally. So I'm coming back to the question with the older people. And so having worked with Celebrating Age, I said to them about this project and they saw the bits I've been sharing online. And I firmly believe that everybody can be creative with words, and being dyslexic or not being able to, or not having nice handwriting or anything like that shouldn't stop it, because words are a tool of communication that most of us use, and therefore we can all write something. And so I said to Celebrating Age, said to Rebecca at Celebrating Age, do you think we could do something with this project? And she said yes. And so I've been working since April this year with different groups of older people, sometimes in shelter accommodation, sometimes in retirement housing, sometimes in care homes, and at sort of different various different types of people, where I do 3 group sessions with them on walking words, and we focus on different things. We look at, I suppose, the mindfulness involved in it. So when we can, we get out and walk, but it's been since April, and there were a lot of rainy days where we were inside looking at a flower, but really looking at a flower. Okay, it's a pink flower, but what does it really look like? Where are the lines in it? Where's the green come from? Why is there a dark red bit around here? What does it look like? And showing people that they can play with language and that can be fun. And then they all get to come away with a little walking words card. So I make up a little card on social media where I share my writing, and they're having those made up and printed off and sent back to them with their own writing on. And that's where, like I said, that older lady who said that she didn't think she could write, she'd just come and listen, and then ended up writing. She's going to have little cards with her writing on that prove that those words she'd carried since school about not being any good at it, well, perhaps they don't have to define her anymore.
It just feels so empowering and emotional. Like, just I think I sometimes think we don't do well by our elders and elder people, and they are often kind of voiceless. And I think that's another part of what you do very well, which is giving voice to people. And that sounds like it was powerful to be a part of, and to enable an older person to feel like, actually, I can write something.
Yeah, it's been beautiful, and it's been brilliant. And I mean, I'm stepping into rooms, and I've had to check my own kind of biases frequently, stepping into a room and saying, right, I'm going to talk to you about my writing practice, and we're going to do some writing. And somebody comes with a notepad and says, I write poetry, and I've written poetry every day of my life. And somebody else comes to me and says, well, I said to one chap, well, you've got a real feel for rhythm. And he said, it's because I'm a musician. I was like, I didn't even think to ask what you did. And he's like, yeah, I played in bands all my life. I write songs. Okay, well, poetry and songs are the same thing, essentially. So that's why you've got a real sense of rhythm. So I think we can often judge people. And that's actually that, if you don't mind me meandering a little bit, that was another lovely sort of moment where I had an older person come into the room, and she really struggled with walking. She came with a frame. We had to make sure that the right chair was at the table because she could only sit on certain chairs. Really, obviously, in significant pain with movement. Wanted to tell us. Also told me she'd also written poetry her whole life, had some brilliant, she brought some of her other poetry to show me, which was just beautiful. And then told us all of these wonderful stories about climbing in the Alps and ski lifts that stopped because of lightning strikes and all sorts of things. And you see this, I'm gonna say the patronizing thing that came into my head. You see this little old lady, and then she tells you her story, and you go, wow, that's just smashed every kind of vision I had of who you are, because A, you haven't always been what I see in front of me, and B, whatever we are in a moment doesn't ever tell our full story, does it?
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good reminder. And there are evolutions and chapters of our stories that, I guess, as we get older, maybe less people are interested in, or people are less interested in our stories when we're older.
I've done some other projects with reminiscence, and it's just really beautiful to be able to listen to people who perhaps don't have anybody left to listen to them, or don't feel like anybody wants to listen to them. And that's been really lovely thing to do. I was involved in a project for the Queen's Jubilee, which actually, one of the sessions of it actually fell on the day the Queen, the death of Elizabeth II was announced, which was quite interesting because that was the day that we were introducing. I'd done workshops with older people, reminiscence workshops about their memories of the coronation and growing up in the 50s. And then I'd done workshops with young people in schools about what it was like to grow up in the 50s. And then on the day that Queen Elizabeth's death was announced, we were bringing the older people and the young people together for the first time.
Oh gosh,
So that was quite a fascinating and powerful thing to be a part of, sort of regardless of how you may or may not feel about the monarchy. It was just really interesting to be talking about it there and then with people who were children when Elizabeth came to the throne, and people who are children now, just at the moment when a new king was coming to the throne. It was a really fascinating project to be a part of that. And the children wanted to know, well, not all of them, but my two favourite things. One child said, I don't know if I can ask them. I said, it's all right, I think you can ask anything. Well, I want to know about where they went to the toilet. So I will absolutely go and ask them. And so then the older gentleman that he was talking to spent a very long time talking to him about the outhouse at the bottom of the garden and wiping your bottom on newspaper, which was hilarious. And the other question was, did you eat chicken nuggets? No. That was my other favourite.
Or the really important questions.
Yes, exactly. What did you wipe your bum on, and did you eat chicken nuggets? When you're 8, there aren't many more important questions than that, are there?
Exactly. But yeah, on a, I guess that's I don't know if serendipitous is the right word, but like a coming together of those two things in a really historic kind of way that you could never have planned. But what a fascinating time to do that final bit.
It's a story I'm storing up for when somebody wants to hear my reminiscences, I can tell you that.
And my own experience of your walking words have been inspiring to me as well, because I think for people listening, do go and follow Ruth on Knapsack Productions. It's definitely your Instagram handle, right?
That is, it's Knapsack Production, I think. I don't think there's even an S.
Okay, Knapsack. I'll include the link. But what I love about them is that they're just short. They're short, and so sometimes when I'm thinking about writing something, because I'm used to sort of writing songs, if I've just got a line, I think what am I going to do with that? It just sits in my phone forever, and I never really finish it or add to it. So it was really inspiring just to see your mind, those mindful moments when you're out walking on an Instagram post in a really, short form thing. And I was like, I could do that. And it inspired me to post one of the things that I've been sort of mulling over for a little while. So I wanted to thank you for that, because it is inspiring.
Oh, good. That's the idea. And I mean, for me as well, I sometimes look back and think, oh, there's a typo, or oh, I don't think I wanted that there. But actually, I think that's part of it. I'm not posting things that are finished or polished. I'm not posting things that I've spent a long time creating and then going, oh, I came up with this just now. Actually, it's sort of 3 weeks in the planning. I'm quite honest about what I'm posting, and because I think it's the process for me that is as important. And I might go and do something else with those things. I might also not. It might also just have been about that moment, and I think that's okay as well. Sometimes we get quite keen on an outcome. That's probably one of my problems with the education. We get so focused on an outcome, a specific outcome, and something that is considered to be an achievement. So I got asked a little while ago, are you going to write a book of your working words? I don't know. I might not. And for me, that might be almost as important to go, no, it's just this. This is all it is. This is what it's about. It's about that in the moment. Who knows?
And I think I think maybe there was an interesting conversation we had about power and when you feel powerful. Maybe power is something that is imbued or bestowed upon a person. So if I can, I mean, I'm sure there'll be people that are watching or listening to this going, Ruth is a powerful woman. And I really feel that, like, so strongly. Like, Ruth is a powerful, look at all of the things that she does to empower other people, but to hear stories and inspire and tell stories and encourage people. And so for me, I feel like you are a really powerful woman. And I don't know how that sits with you, or if that's just a bit.
I'm sitting here in awkwardness. That's what I'm sitting here in. It's lovely thing. It is. I don't. Perhaps it's a female thing. Perhaps it's a.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think we're often not encouraged to celebrate all the things we do. So actually, talking through with you all the things I've done, I'm going, oh yeah, I did that, didn't I? Oh, I did that as well, didn't I? And sometimes, again, perhaps it's this. I'm trying really hard not to moan about capitalism, but this kind of treadmill that we're on, that we're always aiming for the next thing, and that you're never finished, and there's always something else, that you sort of forget all the things that have happened beforehand. I think it's actually really lovely for you to give me the opportunity to reflect on those things and to talk about them and to go, oh yeah, oh I did that, didn't I? That's quite good.
Yeah.
I was in a hot tub the other day with some friends because I had the bliss
Nice
that I
segue.
went to a spa, and some other people who I didn't know got into the same hot tub because we were in a communal space, and we were all sort of talking about what we do and what have you. And I was with two very good friends of mine from university who I've known forever, and somebody said, oh, so what do you do? I said, oh well, I'm sort of a teacher. Because that's quite an easy thing to say, and people understand what that is. And my friend went, no, she's not, and then reeled off all the things that I do. But I think quite often we're encouraged to be modest, and I don't think that necessarily that you want to be kind of arrogant and braggy, but it is quite nice to go, oh, actually, I do a few things, don't I? And I am reasonably worthwhile, and I am kind of doing things that are good.
You're amazing. You're amazing. And it reminds me of a song by Imelda May called Proud and Humble. And I think it's just a really interesting balance of being proud and humble, and maybe pride, because again, pride and power are two words that can easily be very negative. But I think we should, as women, claim as our own more often than we do.
Yeah,
that seems like a great place to leave the podcast.
It does.
Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me, and it's been really inspiring, and I really hope that other people or will also find it inspiring. I think the takeaway for me is that nothing has to be perfect and polished and finished, and you find inspiration and just go with it, and that is led by your passions. So that's just such a lovely story to hear. So thank you for telling me your story.
Thank you, Amy. It's just been lovely to be able to be positive. I so often get caught up in what's not working and how it needs fixing. It's actually really nice to talk about positive things.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and if you really want to help me out, I would love it if you could leave me a review and share my podcast with friends who you think would also enjoy it. This podcast was produced by Lexi at Digital Hero, and the music was created by Charlie at Walters Music Productions.